Hello there, welcome to the program People, Politics and Power. I am Imonia Marere. The Global Summit on Climate Change, otherwise known as the Conference of the Parties, or COP27, has ended in Sharm El Sheikh, Egypt, after over 2 weeks of jaw by world leaders, business executives, environmental experts, non-state actors, and activists. More than 90 heads of government and representatives of over 190 countries were present at this year's UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. COP has been held annually since the first UN climate agreement in 1992. It is used by governments to agree on policies and actions to limit global temperatures and adapt to impacts associated with climate change. Now, ahead of COP27, possible climate change measures were discussed at the 2022 United Nations General Assembly, including the launch of the Rising Nations Initiative by several island nations and the announcement by Denmark and Scotland of finance measures to developing countries. This is the second time the United Nations-sponsored conference has taken place on the African continent after the 2016 COP22, which took place in Marrakesh, Morocco. It carried with it the hopes of the entire African continent for a successful outcome. COP27 focused attention on strengthening adaptation and resilience, mitigating emissions, facilitating a just transition, and increasing funding for climate solutions. Now, Sub-Saharan Africa is said to contribute less than 1% of the cumulative carbon emissions globally, but it is the worst hit by the impact of climate change. It is estimated that the continent needs about $40 billion each year to provide its citizens with access to clean energy sources. So what was the African agenda at this year's conference? What were its strategies and tactics for positive takeaways? In fact, what did Africa come away with from Sharm El Sheikh? Poorer nations demanded compensation for climate impacts that are caused by the industrialized nations of the global north. Some kind of reparation from the richer nations, you will say, for carbon emissions, also described as climate adaptation financing. But what did they get? What did these African countries get out of COP27 in Sharm El Sheikh, Egypt? Well, these are the issues we'll be taking a look at as we do a post-mortem of COP27 2022. We shall be back in a moment to introduce our guest analysts who are joining us right here in Nigeria in the studio and who are also joining us from Sharm El Sheikh in Egypt after this time out.
COP27, President Shukri, Your Majesties, Excellencies, dear friends. In just days, our planet's population will cross a new threshold. The 8 billionth member of our human family will be born. This milestone puts into perspective what this climate conference is all about. How will we answer when baby 8 billion is old enough to ask, what did you do for our world and for our planet when you had the chance? Excellencies, this UN climate conference is a reminder that the answer is in our hands. And the clock is ticking. We are in the fight of our lives and we are losing. Greenhouse gas emissions keep growing. Global temperatures keep rising, and our planet is fast approaching tipping points that will make climate chaos irreversible. We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. The war in Ukraine, other conflicts have caused so much bloodshed and violence and had dramatic impacts all over the world. But we cannot accept that our attention is not focused on climate change. We must, of course, work together to support peace efforts and end the tremendous suffering. But climate change is on a different timeline and a different scale. It is a defining issue of our age. It is the central challenge of our century. It is unacceptable, outrageous, and self-defeating to put it on the back burner. Indeed, many of today's conflicts are linked with growing climate chaos. And the war in Ukraine has exposed the profound risks of our fossil fuel addiction. And today's crisis cannot be an excuse for backsliding or greenwashing. If anything, they are a reason for greater urgency, stronger action, and effective accountability. Excellencies, human activity is the cause of the climate problem, so human action must be the solution. Action to re-establish ambition and action to rebuild trust, especially between North and South.
That was UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the beginning of COP27, calling for action from the developed countries of the world and, of course, the financing of adaptation for the poorer countries of the global south. Well, I'm joined in the studio right now by our guest analyst, Air Commodore Akugbe Iyamu. Air Commodore Iyamu is a renowned climate change expert and researcher on climate crisis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Also joining us via Zoom from Egypt, Sharm El Sheikh in Egypt, is Sarah Shaw. Sarah is the International Program Coordinator, Climate Justice and Energy, Friends of the Earth International. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. We're also joined by Titilope Akosa, who is the Executive Director, Center for 21st Century Issues. Titilope, thank you for finding time to join us all the way from Egypt. Also joining us from here in the nation's capital is Halima Imam. Halima is the founder, Climate Action Team. Halima, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good, welcome. All right, so let's begin from Egypt, where Sarah is joining us from. Sarah, you were present at the entire session, almost 2 weeks, or over 2 weeks of deliberations at this year's COP. How would you describe the COP27 this year as distinct from, say, COP26 or any other COP that you have attended?
So yes, and I think first of all, it's important to say that this COP is not quite over yet. We're not quite at the post-mortem, and we're likely to run over a few days as countries try to agree things. So we're going into the closing hours. This COP's it has been different from previous COPs. It's an African COP on African soil. It's a COP taking place in Egypt, which is obviously a very challenging human rights regime. And it's a COP where perhaps civil society has not been able to be on the streets making the same demands of climate justice that it would in other places, but we have tried to still do that from inside the talks. It's obviously very important issues being discussed here, and as we go into the closing hours, some of the key issues still at stake are whether there will be a fund for loss and damage financing, whether that will actually be agreed, or whether it will be blocked by rich countries. And as you say, adaptation, a really key issue, whether that will be pushed into next year. Emissions reductions. So far, we see the language pushing for more responsibility from developing countries, from larger developing countries, as you heard in the Secretary General's speech, but a lack of responsibility from those countries who are most responsible for the crisis.
All right, Titi Lokpe, let me come to you very quickly. Titi Lokpe Akosa, what were Africa's priorities at COP27?
Yeah, our priorities as African is very clear here. We came here to COP27 believing that this is a COP of implementation, and we are focusing basically on loss and damage finance and the global goal on finance, even on finance for adaptation. Finance has always been heavy on most of our demands and asks. And this year, the issue of loss and damage is so very important to us, not only because loss and damage has been experienced by Africa in a most horrifying way, but right now, currently, a lot of our countries are being inundated by flood, and we know that most of these floods are climate-induced, and that's why the issue of loss and damage is so important. Most of our local people have lost their livelihoods, and they are just fighting for survival. And I think for Africa, we shouldn't be fighting for survival because we didn't cause climate change. What we really need to do is to continue not only to survive, but to thrive. But here, the discussions have been very slow in terms of getting the needed finance for loss and damage and for the global goal on finance. We know that Africa's need in terms of finance for climate change is up to $86.7 billion annually. But yet, even on the $100 billion that the developed countries have agreed to, they've not been able to deliver on it. And here now we are still negotiating. So what do we have post-2020 finance? We have not been there. The discussions have continued to go on, and there has been delays here and there. This is what we have seen here today. But we believe that even at the dying hour, something important can be reached. The kind of the finance that we expect shall be delivered. But we cannot say all hope is lost. At least some countries have been announcing donations to the climate loss and damage finance. New Zealand have done, Denmark has done, and I think Scotland also have done. So we have 3 countries, and we believe the other developing countries will step up and also announce more loss and damage finance. And as at yesterday, there is a language that has also accepted the issue of technical assistance on loss and damage. That is what we have seen here today. So all hope is not lost, but we believe that we can get a better outcome for COP27. Thank you.
Did Africa speak with one voice at this conference?
Yes, very well. Yeah, Africa actually spoke with one voice. Africa has a common position on this, and we are continuing to pursue the African position here in Sharm El Sheikh.
All right, stay with us, Titi Lokpe, stay with us. In the course of the discussion, there might be issues that we would like you to respond to. But let me come to the studio here. Air Commodore Akugbe Yamu, you are a renowned climate change expert and a researcher on climate crisis. Now, COP has been there since 1992. In 2015, we joined the rest of the world in signing the climate agreement in Paris. And since then, like you have heard from those who went to Sharm El Sheikh, it appears that there has been a lot of slow progress, particularly in terms of adaptation and the financing of these adaptations.
Yes, thank you for having me. Good morning. You see, first of all, what was the original ambition of Conference of Parties? 1992, after the Earth Conference, it came in 94, 197 countries signing. Now, the goal is to review the communication and carbon emission reduction by countries that sign up to it. And with that information, the Conference of Parties is able to look at the impact of their effort, and also examine the process as it moves the UN FCCC goes forward. Now, that is the framework, and the main determinant is nationally determined carbon. What is nationally determined carbon? You see, your negotiation power depends on that, on the nationally determined carbon. Now, the NDC, what is a climate change framework that shows your reduction of carbon that is set by the Conference of Parties and is reviewed every 5 years. That's what you are doing. The COP is the policy arm of the UNFCCC. It is not it is not a father climate. It's a give and take. You must do something for them to be able to give you. Now, you see they are stressing more on mitigation. 80% of the funding of everything goes to mitigation, not adaptation. And what we need in Africa is adaptation. It's adaptation. We need adaptation. We need interaction, we need action, and we need process. We need process. The World Weather Attribution, I've told you that, look, the rain that is falling here is 80% due to climate change than the dam being released on or whatever. So that is the situation that we are in now. Climate change has left the fringes and is now a main determinant of, it has a social cost now. It has an economic cost. Now, what's not going to do is that you need country central bank now need to have a climate expert as they are planning their budgets. Because you need him, you need to assess the budget. What is the impact of climate change on this budget? Because just like whatever it is, it can erase it in one day. Now we're talking about people that died. What are the animals that died? Nobody's talking about that. So some people went to ground zero.
The impact on agriculture, the impact on
lives.
Other
So the
forms
social
of
cost
livelihoods.
is yes. So now you are not talking of you have risk assessment now. That's what climate change is all about. It's not about rain falling or whatever. No, risk assessment. Now, how are you going to make countries when they have very structured NDC to invest in where you have climate challenges?
Now, you just spoke about nationally determined carbon emissions.
Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because you said each country's negotiating power depends on that.
That's what you are bringing to the table.
Africa is known to contribute very little in terms of carbon emissions to the overall global carbon emissions. So what should Africa that is appears to be the victim of the carbon emissions from the industrialized northern hemisphere, how should they be going about these negotiations?
See, in reality, you don't play victim, you play reality. Now, Africa have more than 3 disadvantages. One, you are in the south side of the economy. 2, you are in the southern hemisphere. 3, you have been ravaged by COVID-19 and the flooding that has happened. So what are you doing in that? Now, our contribution is about 3%. So if we burn the whole gas in Nigeria, we only raise it to about 3.5%. But Nigeria is doing very, very well. You understand that African Climate Market Initiative that was launched. You understand? Then the initial engagement is to trade in 300 megatons of carbon. Now that is going to unlock 6 billion in funding and bring about 30 million jobs by 2030, which is about 19 times more than what they envisioned in 2020. And the next ambition is to take it from there to the next level, to unlock 120 billion by 2050, and also unlock also be able to entrench 110 million jobs. So the African Climate Market Initiative is what Africans got from there. I mean, you see, you're going to get money there to be able to get your job started, to be able to get your biodiversity, and those are adaptation. The climate have not been able to wreck us dry because nature is still intervening. Nature is still sequestering a whole lot of carbon from the atmosphere. But we must present the situation as dire as it is. We must present it like that. Now, the flooding around here was catastrophic, was existential. It was essential. It came in one of the address at COP27. So that should have been our own point of negotiation. I like the soundbite from Nigeria. I like the soundbite from Nigeria. See, we've done all the preparation. We have a very functional and engaging climate act. We also have a very, very robust climate committee. So those are enough to be able to engage the outside world. But what is important is your NDC. It's very important to engage in them.
Nationally determined carbon.
Yes.
All right, let's bring in Halima Imam at this point in time, if she's with us now. Halima, I'm sure that you have been listening to other guests on the program. Let's bring you in and let's share your views on the COP27 in Sharm El Sheikh.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, just like all the other speakers have said, like, Ms. Shaw, I don't know, Mrs. Shaw, she talked about slow negotiations, right? So the negotiations have not been as very vibrant and really fast as we expect it to be. And, but then, all hope is not lost, like the other speaker said. We're still trying to, get a lot of the developed world, who obviously are the cause of a lot of the climate mess that we are in right now. To do a lot of climate financing. There's a lot of artificial barrier around the monies and that are supposed to be released to help fight this climate change. So we're hoping that a lot of the barriers could be removed. We have a lot of youth speaking out. We have a lot of people talking about it. I saw that there was this climate torch, by, and even my own team actually did a, parallel protest of the climate torch, to insist that we get climate justice, that there's adequate climate financing. But all in all, I think that COP has been very great. It's highlighted and it's spotlight, a lot of things that are happening, especially for us here in Africa. If we look at the flooding here in Nigeria, it's devastating. The fact that it's not just the flooding, it's that there's very serious levels of poverty. It's that there's insecurity. And all of this have come together and we're battling all of them on different fronts at the same time. So I think that more has to be done, like everyone is saying. More has to be done to bring about climate financing, because without these finances, we can't do much. And, on educating even the local people about climate change and, for us to try to stop a lot of these activities that are, causing these offshoots of climate change. So I believe that there is still time. I believe that more negotiations can still be made. I believe that all of the people that went to COP27 as Africans have been speaking with one voice, which is very impressive. And then I'm hoping that, those that are supposed to, which are, like the Prime Minister of Barbados said, she said, how many more people have to speak up, and how many more countries have to falter, for those of you who can direct, your people at the World Bank to do what they're supposed to do. So, climate change around here is devastating. It's devastating. It's bad. The flooding for this year is unprecedented. We're hoping that, like we have said, climate finance, and more climate finance will come out of the negotiations at the climate, conference of the parties.
All right, stay with us, Halima. Let's get across to Sarah again. Sarah, So much has been said about climate financing. Now, but Titi Lope earlier on spoke about donations from certain countries of the West. And that's talking about Denmark, Scotland, and maybe one other country. Are we talking about the same thing? Climate financing and donations. Is it donations that Africa needs, or a much more stronger financial commitment to mitigation and adaptation?
So what's needed is a much stronger financial commitment. It's good that countries have stepped up and made these small contributions, but it's a drop in the ocean. It's an absolute drop in the ocean. We, the money that is owed for climate finance is needed for adaptation, for countries to adapt. It's needed for the transition to away from fossil fuels in a just way, to renewable energy systems that benefit people. And it's needed for those kind of losses that have been caused by climate change, by things like those devastating floods that have happened, what we call loss and damage, things that's compensation that's needed. There is a huge amount of money needed. There is a climate debt that is owed by the richest countries who are here, who have continued to emit for decades and have provided very little money. So these donations, they're welcome, but they're not the money that's needed for the transition and the transformation. And I would say also, I think what we've seen is many rich countries looking to say that, well, private finance can count. It can be investment, it can be carbon market money, it can be loans, it can be philanthropy. And I think there is a need for public international finance that's additional to flow to countries in the global south to tackle climate change, and that is not forthcoming. We're making progress in hopefully establishing this loss and damage fund. It may still all fall apart. It could be blocked. It's being blocked very much by the US. We hope for more money to come in, but we have not seen even the inadequate 100 billion a year by 2020 provided by developed countries. So they are very far behind in doing what they should be doing. And it's not enough to say, here is a small donation.
Now, a few years back, African countries launched these call for reparations for slave trade, slavery. Now, there is another call for reparations, something like that. Reparations for climate change, reparations for climate damage caused by the rich countries of the Northern Hemisphere. How far can this go?
So I think this is the area that gets called loss and damage. Yes, so it is a kind of reparations for the damage that has been caused, for the damage that can't be resolved. This is what one of the main fights is about here. I mean, rich countries don't like the word reparation. They don't like the idea of it being their responsibility. They don't like words like liability. They're running away from those kinds of things. And what we see here as well is this real blame game of trying to push responsibilities to some of these larger emerging economies, bigger developing countries like India and China, sort of saying, actually, these guys need to be contributing. These guys are responsible. But really, it is the developed countries of the global north that are most responsible and who have not paid any money and who have not taken the right action to tackle their emissions.
All right, let's bring in Titi Lope. Titi Lope, how do you think, is there a better way by which the poorer countries of the southern hemisphere can actually be helped by the richer countries of the north?
Yes, there are many ways that climate finance can be delivered. It can be delivered through the UNFCCC processes. It can be done bilaterally. It can be discussed even in a trilateral agreement. It depends, but the most important thing, just like the first speaker has said, that they should own up to their responsibilities. We must continue from the global south to remind them of the historical injustice they have caused us, because we did not cause climate change, they caused it, and they are supposed to help us to adapt and mitigate it. And that will be done through adequate financing of climate actions in the global south. And these are things that cannot be changed. These are things that everybody understands, but somehow they've been avoiding their responsibility. And for us from the global south, we need to stand up to them and continue to put our voices down and insist that they must take responsibility for their historical injustice they've caused us. Yes, they don't want to hear the word reparations. Yes, they don't want to hear the word compensation. But then they need to release that funding, because if they have used us, the atmosphere, they have polluted, and it means that polluters must pay, and we must continue to urge them to pay. Not only to urge them, we must continue to call them out on these issues, because people are dying every day on the ground. For how many people must die before we realize our responsibility? This is a humanity issue. We must take responsibility for our actions. The developed countries must take responsibility for their actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Titi. Stay with us. Commodore, there has been the call for a movement from ambition. Now, the whole climate negotiations is hinged on ambition of moving on to accountability and then to implementation. Between 2015, when the agreement was signed in Paris, and now, how much of that has happened? Are we still just joining? Are we just talking? Or has there been some appreciable movement in terms of the richer countries of the world that are the major polluters of the environment taking responsibility and being accountable for their actions, and in terms of implementation?
Yes, there is an appreciable movement. Recognizing it alone is an appreciable movement. I mean, being mentioned by the highest, by the U.S. It's appreciated, it's recognized. But going on, you see, we cannot solve climate change with the trickle of amount that is coming in. By the last count, they said the global south needs $2 trillion every year until 2030. Where's that one going to come from? Who's going to fund it?
We are just getting donations.
Now there's a 100 billion that was promised in Copenhagen some years ago to be delivered by 2020. That was never delivered. There's another one that was promised in Paris, but never delivered. So what we need is not sound bites. We need mission statements, deliberate mission statements to really, really get Africa on course. Now, there's another aspect that nobody is talking about. In the course of the COP27, the population dropping 8 billion. You know what that means? You're going to have more pollution. More of them, where are they? You're going to have more pollution. You're going to have more migration. You're going to have more diseases. Where people move, they take disease from one place to the other. They take diseases from one place to the other. But I like the soundbite from WTO. Say, look, there's one aspect that we are missing, that we have not been able to involve the world trade and trade policies in managing climate change. You understand? So by the time you do that, you are able to get, your trade policy is able to get you money for adaptation. There's a fund that was just was just given in 2021. That's $48.7 million. 31% of it went to for climate change. So if we're waiting for big sum to just drop like that, you're not going to. Let's engage the IMF, engage them on bilateral basis, and get whatever you can get, because there's nobody that will not be emotive at the consequences of climate change around here. So if they already told us that you need 2 trillion every year up to 2030, that's a huge amount. And by 2023 now, we should be looking at it. The snow has started in the global north. That's a trigger. That's a trigger that we should be prepared for another flooding. Nema have said it. I said it some 2 months ago that the one for next year, we should be talking about that one, how we're going to how we are going to get resources together. So going forward, there's been some appreciable progress. At least there's recognition of the consequences. But does it stop there? No, we must come out and engage bilaterally.
Well, all the time we keep talking about flooding.
Yeah.
Of course, the devastation that it caused this year
Yeah.
was the worst in a decade.
Yeah.
The last was in 2012, thereabout. But nobody seems to be talking about the impact of desertification anymore.
You know, it's very funny, the position of Nigeria. You know, we have some frontline local government in the Sahel region. That's on its own, it's already a threat. You have the same in Ethiopia and Somalia. They are all there. You see, the global south is where the whole problem crystallizes. You know, you have 66% water and 33% land. What does that mean? Your temperature, you know, the water can take all the temperature and just be releasing it. What are you now doing? You are gathering more water in the atmosphere. And you're going to have very, very devastating rate. So the drought will always also be there. But you know, in the global north, they have more land. But the land now can take all the heat and release it almost immediately. So the land cools down. So the snow forms. So as you're having more, the snow is settling down very, very fast. So you are going to have it, and you are going to have it here. But for here, the temperature, when you are talking of climate change, what are you talking about? You are talking about temperature and water. And their relationship in the global south is very, very unstable. Very, very unstable. That gives you to drought. Like Somalia and Ona, they don't normally get water through the natural means. But here we are lucky. You have almost 267 billion meters cube of surface water and 58 billion meters cube of underground water, and about 37 billion meters cube of them are in the dam. So you can have your agriculture. So you are not talking of drought there. What you are talking about here is flooding. Others are worrying about drought and whatever. And this word, equity, the definition is very, very crucial. Equity means you must bring something, and I must bring something. We meet each other halfway. It is not where you are playing the victim. Then I come and give you some. No. If you must negotiate from a very strong position. Look, we have done this, so you do this for us. Yes.
That again now raises the question of what Africa can actually bring to the table. What can it bring to the negotiating table with the rich countries of the global north? You just talked about equity.
Yeah.
What will be the component of that equity that Africa can present and bring to the table, or the global south generally?
Yes, like the first thing is the most beautiful one is the African Climate Market Initiative. That's all. You know, they've increased the cost of carbon from $7 to $20 per megaton. That's a very good one. That's another way of getting money to finance your transition energy, to get your you see, the thing is that we here, Nigeria has a very, very beautiful environment to sell. Our mangrove is the biggest in Africa. The biodiversity, Calabar, is the hub of the biodiversity. This was what the African Climate Market Initiative is doing, is for you to be able to strengthen this. Strengthen your biodiversity, strengthen your gas transition, and which we have a lot. So we can orchestrate this. We can increase the momentum of this and bring it to the front. So that on its own will be able to bring to accelerate the climate financing. Yes.
When the UN Secretary General spoke at the beginning of COP27, he emphasized the dangers that lie ahead if nothing is done concretely.
Yeah.
And those dangers, he seemed to suggest, were more in the global south. But of course, in the final analysis, we also impact the global north. Let's talk a bit about what you consider to be those inherent dangers, those dangers that are looming for the global south as far as climate change is concerned. We've seen a bit of it this year with the floods in Nigeria especially. We have seen monsoons in other parts of the continent. And even in the global north, we have also seen all kinds of weather-induced disasters. So are these what he's talking about, or is there anything else that lies in waiting?
You just put it mildly. He said our leg is on the accelerator to hell.
Yeah, those were the
So he said that we are still putting it. Then Ban Ki-moon said, look, bury fossil fuel on the ground. But these are not. If you look at where we are now, the global side, most of us here, is we need massive funds for transition, for structure. Now, in as much as you are telling us to do, but you must also build the entities with resilience to be able to withstand most of these things. Let me tell you, the 2020 report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that in the next 2 decades, we are going to arrive at 1.5 degrees centigrade. That's consequential. The scenario between now and then is going to be very consequential. There's no two ways about it. So the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is the research aspect of UNED, United Nations Environmental Program, and the World Meteorological Organization. So the warning is there. The warning is there. So how are we going to go out of it? Is to build. If 80% of the money is going on mitigation, which is renewable energy and all, we only have 1% penetration of renewable energy. Now it's adaptation that we need. Structure and resilience. Building the entities to be able to respond to whatever we're going to do. So the WTO is also telling you now, look, we are going to build a criteria now that will look at it that, look, this is the country. This is what you are producing. They will now look at it against your national income. And from that, you will be able to relate with that criteria that they have built.
All right, let's bring in Halima Imam once again. Halima, I'm sure that you have digested a bit all of what is being put on the table from the studio here and from Sharm El Sheikh in Egypt. And we're looking at assessing the economic and geographical realities of global decarbonization and the transformations to advance a zero carbon future. Is that a possibility? A zero carbon future?
Well, anything is possible. So I wouldn't say it's not a possibility, but then it will only be achieved through consistency, through determination, through discipline, through dedication. So yes, it's possible. But then again, when you look at it, we do a lot of things. There is a time. So we wouldn't say that. Basically, it's possible. It's possible. Decarbonization is possible. A sustainable future is certainly possible, so long as we begin to, look at a lot of green energy, a lot of green jobs. We sensitize the people. We are able to empower more women. It would really help to bring about a reduction in the carbon emissions. And we are clamoring for the finance. So if we are able to get to put all the structures in place that will help to keep or set the ball rolling, keep the progress going on sustainable energy, it would really help to, bring about or bring very close to us a zero carbon emission, environment or society. It's a possibility. I wouldn't say it's not. But then we need to do a lot of work. We need to be very consistent. We need to be very determined. We need to be very disciplined, because right now there is no great sense of determination when it comes to big polluters. There is no great sense of responsibility. There is no great sense of discipline. So we need all of this. We need all of this. And we need to, for us who are victims, for us who are, suffering on the ground, we need to, wear the shoes of trying to make sure that we empower a lot of people, women, men, children, the elderly. All of us have to get involved in making sure that we make our environment sustainable, that we're able to try to play our part in this story of decarbonization. Basically, if all of us work together, we keep, putting our voices out there, we make them as loud as possible, we're bold and firm in our resolve for people who have done this to us to pay. Definitely, a zero carbon world is possible.
Are we doing enough at this moment? Governments, civil society groups like yours, and the ordinary people, are they conscious enough of the dangers that lie ahead? And are they doing enough to attain this goal of zero carbon emission?
Well, we're not doing, we're trying our best, but are we doing enough? Maybe not so much, right? Now we need the government to, put actions together with promise. We need, civil society organizations are trying their best, yes, but we need us to do more. And for the people, we need them to, have a psychological reorientation. We need, especially for, people, when we go into very low income environments or societies, and we go to some of these rural areas, sometimes it's really hard to convince some people that these things are to teach them how to do these things so that they can help themselves. So it all boils down to finances. It all boils down to dedication. So we would need the government to do more. The government is trying their best, yes, but then we need them to do more. We need them to, to put more effort. We need them to collaborate more, not just with civil society organizations, with faith-based organizations. Because, like Karl Marx had said, that religion is the opium of the masses. So some people, somehow, I don't understand, religion is not supposed to get them, to have that kind of mindset, but, just somehow it's a twisted reality for them. So we hope that the government collaborates more with a lot of youths that have a lot of energy and, want to go to these places and want to do this work. And we I'm hoping that the people's minds are open to understanding that if we do not try to make our environment sustainable, in a few years it's not going to be habitable. And we wouldn't have, where we call home, and those places, that we're always so happy to go to at the end of the day, they wouldn't exist anymore. So we need to continue to play our part. We need to, do more. We need to collaborate more. The government needs to do more. The government needs to put more money in place, more infrastructure.
All right.
More sensitization has to go on.
All right. Thank you so much, Halima. Great to have you on the program today. Very quickly, let's get a last line from Sarah Shaw. Sarah, what would be your last word on this program today? What would be your advice to all concerned?
So in these closing hours of COP27, we call on rich countries to step up and do what they should be doing in terms of committing to cutting their emissions and committing the finance that's needed and agreeing to a loss damage finance facility.
Thank you so much. Titilokbe Akosa, if you are there, what is your last word? What is your advice from Egypt?
Yeah, my advice is very, very important here now, because what we are asking for is, we have talked about decarbonization now. Who should take that responsibility for decarbonization? It is the developed country. We are talking about 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal, and we've not seen enough finance that match that for us to get there. And then we are talking about zero. I'm always afraid of the word zero, because we are introducing a lot of techno fixes, geoengineering, all sorts of polluting things that will cause more damage to the planet. That is what they are putting on the table, rather than being sincere and looking at it deeply to actually reduce their emissions. What they are putting on the table is all form of offsetting logic on the table. And this is not what we need to even get to the zero they are talking about, because I don't believe in zero. I think we should use what is responsible, what is not risky, what will be good for the planet and the people. We need deep decarbonization. We need deep emission cuts from the developed country. And we need finance.
All right.
For the
Titi,
developing
thank you so
countries
much.
to
Thank you so much for your views. Thank you so much. Titi Lokbe Akosa, Executive Director, Center for 21st Century Issues, joining us straight from Sharm El Sheikh in Egypt, where COP27 has taken place for this year. And of course, right here, back in the studio, Air Commodore Iyamu, on last word, 30 seconds, that you would advise the entire world, and Nigeria especially.
You know, well, everybody is talking about himself. How am I going to be better? You know, the climate change is a very huge avenue for investment.
Okay.
Huge avenue for investment. Why don't we look at, no matter how bad the flood is, there are two crops that grow very well in the flood. That is rice and sugarcane.
So we should think of
about that. And it's not just it's not just getting them as crops. You know, the hulls from both of them, it's also used to generate electricity. So all is not bad. And the flood also bring alluvial soil, which is very, very fertile for you to plant. So let's explore our
opportunities that come with it. Yes. They always say that there's opportunity in every situation.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Air Commodore Akugbe Iyamu, renowned climate change expert and a researcher on climate crisis, joining me here in the studio. Thank you so much for coming on. Halima Imam is the founder, Climate Action Team. She joined us virtually on the program today. Thank you so much for your time. Sarah Shaw is the International Program Coordinator, Climate Justice and Energy, Friends of the Earth International. She joined us from Sharm El Sheikh, Egypt. Thank you so much for your contributions. And Titi Lokbe Akosa is the Executive Director, Center for 21st Century Issues, who also joined us from Sharm El Sheikh, Egypt. All of you, thank you so much for your time. That's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of the program People, Politics, and Power.